Hello everyone. We are going to practice drawing ears today. So I have a reference photos sheet for ears that is posted on Schoology for you. Got a lot of side view ears on the first page, and on the second page, let me zoom out here a little bit. I tried to get some different angles because a lot of the portraits that you'll be drawing will not be profile where you're seeing the ear from the side. Some of them will be more like this where you're seeing the person from the front, or like these. So these might be ones you might want to try more of a front-facing ear for at least one of yours. Today, just for one of them, I'm going to show you how to draw this ear right here. So using this as my reference and just looking at the different parts of the ears, the shape. Ears are something we don't spend a lot of time looking at because they're on the side of our face. They're not something we typically draw a lot of. Sometimes they're covered by hair, so we don't really see them in a portrait anyway. But they are really good for practicing rendering form because a lot of this is just shading to show the deeper, more receding areas where it's darker, and the protruding areas, the places that are sticking out, receiving more light and highlight. So this is a really good practice in rendering. So we're going to start by looking at the outer shape of the ear, how it comes around, where it's attached. And everybody's ear is a little bit different, so it is important to look at your reference and not just make something up. Things that are similar is we all have sort of this folded over lobe area. Some people it's folded over really tightly, so other people's it's more open. And then we have this kind of Y or bent Y shape here. We have the opening into the ear canal. We have this little bump here. And I don't know all the terminology of the different parts of the ear. There is an artist on YouTube named, I believe, Steve Prokopenko. Proko is the YouTube channel that you could check if you want to see a little bit more detail on the anatomy of the ear. So I'm just going to be looking at this shape and then drawing it. I'm going to set it out of the view of my camera though. And a lot of times what I like to start with first is just giving myself a place where that ear is attaching. So when I look at the image and I'm seeing where it's attaching here, is that slightly tilted? Is it really tilted? Is it pretty straight up and down? And this one's just got a little tilt to it. And then I have a place to attach, the top and the bottom. And I'm going to kind of look at the shape of this ear and draw it really lightly to begin with, and then look at how does it attach here at the bottom. And then once I get that form a little bit more set, I can darken up my line a little bit. So it's not this perfect half heart shape. There are some bumps, there's some straighter areas, and then looking at the shape of the lobe. So now that I've got that, I'm going to go in and start drawing the sort of shape of the outer lobe. And it comes down to right about here, and then that line sort of disappears. And I'm just looking at the shapes that I see. This is all just shapes and lines. And then that kind of comes in here and disappears as well. The next thing that sort of stands out to me is this little shape that creates this really dark black area here. So it kind of comes in and around like this, and then kind of here. So I start to kind of piece things together like a puzzle. And then the next thing that stands out is really this kind of like U shape, the inner part of the Y, and then the outer part of this bent Y form, and that actually connects into here, and then maybe a little line right here. So, and then I'm going to just look at everything and see if it looks like I'm getting things in the right spot. And it looks like I need to raise this part up just a little bit. Got a little too low. And again, just looking at the picture that you have, making adjustments. And I would suggest drawing a little lighter, or if you drew dark, go ahead and just lighten things up once you get them drawn out, so that in the end, the lines that we've created here are actually not lines, they're defined by shadow edges and highlight ridges. So I wanted to draw dark enough that we can see the line. But now I'm going to start shading this. So I've got the drawing part done, and I want to start in the darkest area. So really this darkest area is right here where the ear canal opens up, and right next to that kind of flap of cartilage. So I'm just going in with my pencil, and I just have my regular number 2 pencil. I really like this black Murado Warrior, or Murado Black Warrior. I've also got a blender on hand, which I'll be using, a number 3 blender, and I've got an eraser here. So I'm just going in and laying in the darker areas. And as it comes out away from there, it lightens up a little bit. So I'm going to lighten up my touch and kind of lighten it out. And then I'm going to kind of stop in that section. The next part that I see that's really dark is really this section up right underneath the inner part of the ear, outer earlobe, like closest to the head. And I'm kind of avoiding this high part here because that is actually a little lighter. It's a little dark right up against there, but it lightens up going along this ridge. And then coming out here, I'll add a little bit of light gray. I'm going to put a little bit more along here where I see the low part of this bump. So just along that bent Y line, I'll add a little shading. And in here between the outer fold of the outer ear lobe and this bump of the Y, there's a little shadow in here too. So I'm going to go ahead and add some dark in here, and that kind of fades off towards the bottom. And really just maybe all the way along here, just giving a thin little ridge where that earlobe is going to cast a shadow. So then the next places I see some shadow are on the outside, and actually probably the darkest area, I'm going to just go ahead and darken up right around this earlobe. And this will help really get the idea that this ear is sticking up off the skin. This person doesn't have hair around their ear. It looks like they have very, very short hair or a shaved head. So it's not necessary for me to add hair. You could add hair, or if you're looking at a reference with hair and we're just practicing ears, it's okay if we just leave the hair out for now. If you want, we'll practice hair later. But just darken that up. So that gives the illusion that this is coming up off of the skin of the head. And got that all darkened up now. And then I do see some sort of medium gray. I'm going to add a little bit of gray into the outer part of this earlobe. So not quite as dark as what I just did on the very outside of the ear. And then in this section, it's not just white. Where do I see some shadow? I see some along in here, kind of down underneath here. Gets a little bit of shadow along here. There's a little bit of a divot here, and I see some shadow. And I'm just mapping out those areas where I see the darker shadows. I'm leaving a lot of white for now because I am going to use my blender, and that'll help fill in some of those really light gray areas. I'm going to bring out some light gray all the way into this Y. And I feel like the line of this Y is a little dark, so I'm going to erase it. and then just let that kind of fade into there. So I've got it all mapped out now, and go maybe into the skin of the side of the face a little bit. And then I'm going to grab my blender. So I've got my blender here. It's already got some graphite on it. And I'm going to start in the darkest areas where I started shading and just start coming out from there, being careful to follow the contours that I've created, the lines that I've already drawn in, and blending in those darker areas, coming out into the lighter. And I don't want to go over and blend over every single thing right away, because then a lot of times it has a tendency to just turn into the same shade of gray. So I want to kind of be careful and precise about my blending, follow the direction that I've created for myself. And then I am going to come up onto this ridge just a little bit. I'm going to come up away from my pencil where I've shaded, and I'm just going to blend into this so it kind of fades into this higher area, this bent bump here. And then I'm going to come around to the area where I shaded along the outside of the earlobe, and really just keeping the highlight ridge that's right next to this shadow here. I'm going to keep that edge white, and I'll just blend almost up to it. So again, we saw the highlight ridge when we were looking at lips, and there's, you know, usually a shadow, there'll be a highlight next to it. So when you see the shadow, put a highlight next to it. It'll help make those higher areas stick out and the darker areas recede. I'm also leaving a little bit of a highlight ridge here at the bottom, maybe not quite as much as that one, but just a little bit. And then this sort of fades into this form here. And there's a little bit of shadow going on here where it gets a little bit of shadow around this edge. So I'm going to just blend that in. So that's a softer edge. And I'll blend in my little places where I added just little bits of shadow. And again, I'm purposely leaving some areas of white to be the highlights, and just kind of looking little bit by little to see, you know, where do I still need to blend? Did I go too far? And once I get it blended, I'm going to go ahead and blend in this darker area. And just be really careful around the edges. And then I'm going to look and decide, did I lose some of the crispness of my shading? Are there places where I need to go in and just add a little more dark because I just lost some of my contrast? You know, are there places that I need to go in with an eraser maybe and just fix up a little? So if you lost some of that highlight ridge, or I feel like there's a highlight here that I sort of lost, there's a little skinny highlight right along the ridge there, and there's a little one right here that kind of got blended away. And just fix up little tiny bits that need fixed up. And that is one drawing of an ear. So good luck, and I can't wait to see all your ears.